You're about to take a deep dive into one of the biggest true crime cases in the universe, or at least on our part of the planet. From the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today.
It's a frigid evening in Philadelphia, January 26, 2011. Snow blankets the city streets, muffling the usual hustle and bustle. Inside a cozy apartment, Ellen Greenberg, a vibrant 27-year-old first-grade teacher, is supposed to be safe from the cold. But tonight something is terribly wrong. Ellen's fiancé, Samuel Goldberg, leaves their apartment for a workout at the gym located within their apartment complex. It's a routine they've both grown accustomed to. Ellen often stays behind, grading papers or planning lessons for her students at Juniata Park Academy. Her dedication to her job is well known among colleagues and friends. As Samuel heads out, surveillance cameras capture him entering the elevator, dressed in workout shorts and a t-shirt. He appears casual, unhurried. The elevator doors close, and he disappears from view. An hour later, Samuel returns. The surveillance footage shows him re-entering the elevator, still in his gym attire. He exits on their floor and walks toward their apartment. But as he reaches the door, he encounters an unexpected obstacle. The swing bar latch is engaged from the inside. He knocks and calls out to Ellen, but receives no response. Frustration turns to concern. Samuel sends Ellen several text messages and even calls her, but silence is all he gets in return. Growing more anxious, he claims he forces the door open, breaking the swing bar latch in the process. What he says he finds inside is a scene of unimaginable horror. Ellen is in the kitchen, slumped against the lower cabinets. A large kitchen knife protrudes from her chest. Blood pools around her, staining the linoleum floor. Her eyes are open but vacant. Samuel dials 911. On the recorded call, his voice is frantic but strangely measured. He tells the dispatcher that his fiancée is on the floor, but it takes nearly 2 minutes before he mentions the knife sticking out of her chest. The dispatcher instructs him to begin CPR, but he expresses hesitation, noting the knife. First responders arrive swiftly. Among them is Captain Carl, an experienced EMT. He later recounts that upon entering the apartment, the scene strikes him as odd. Ellen's body is cold to the touch, and there's evidence of lividity, a sign that she's been dead for some time. The knife is immediately noticeable, jutting out from her chest. Captain Carl also observes Samuel Goldberg. According to the EMT, Samuel is now wearing sweatpants, a detail that conflicts with the surveillance footage showing him in shorts moments earlier. This discrepancy raises questions. Did Samuel change clothes? If so, why? The initial investigation begins under the assumption of a homicide. 20 stab wounds cover Ellen's body, 10 in the front and 10 in the back. Some wounds are deep, penetrating vital organs. One even severs her spinal cord. The sheer number and location of the wounds seem inconsistent with suicide. However, within days, the ruling shifts dramatically. The Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office reclassifies Ellen's death as a suicide. This sudden change baffles many, including Ellen's parents, Joshua and Sandra Greenberg. Joshua and Sandra are devastated. Their daughter was planning her wedding, excited about her career, and showed no signs of suicidal intent. They struggle to understand how authorities could conclude that Ellen inflicted such brutal injuries upon herself. Determined to find answers, they begin their own quest for the truth. In 2015, former Assistant District Attorney Guy D'Andrea is assigned to review Ellen's case. As he delves into the files, he becomes increasingly troubled by the inconsistencies and gaps in the investigation. He notes that critical evidence, such as the knife, was never tested for fingerprints. The crime scene was not treated with the usual rigor expected in a homicide investigation. D'Andrea contacts the medical examiner to discuss the findings. He expresses his doubts about the suicide ruling, pointing out that some of Ellen's wounds would have been incapacitating. The medical examiner allegedly agrees that the cause of death should be reconsidered, potentially changed to undetermined or homicide. However, before any official action is taken, D'Andrea leaves the district attorney's office for private practice. With his departure, the momentum stalls. The case is transferred to the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office, headed at the time by Josh Shapiro. The Greenbergs pin their hopes on a fresh investigation. They believe that new eyes will see what they have seen all along, that their daughter's death was not a suicide. But their hopes are dashed when the Attorney General's office upholds the original suicide ruling. The Greenbergs are informed that after review, there is insufficient evidence to overturn the cause of death. Feeling dismissed and disheartened, the family continues to push for answers. Meanwhile, investigative journalist Brian Enton begins to explore Ellen's case. His work brings renewed attention to the numerous discrepancies and raises fresh questions about the integrity of the investigation. Enton examines the 911 call made by Samuel Goldberg. The delay in mentioning the knife strikes him as odd. He consults with D'Andrea, who shares his suspicions. They both wonder how someone could overlook a large knife protruding from a loved one's chest. Enton also reviews the surveillance footage. The inconsistency in Samuel's attire, shorts in the footage, sweatpants when first responders arrive, is perplexing. Enton reaches out to Captain Carl, the EMT, who confirms his recollection. Captain Carl is adamant that Samuel was wearing sweatpants at the scene. This alleged change of clothes raises further questions. Did Samuel have a reason to switch outfits? Was there something on his clothes he needed to conceal? Autopsy photos previously unseen by the public surface during Enton's investigation. The images are graphic and unsettling. They show the knife clearly lodged in Ellen's chest. Bruises cover various parts of her body, her neck, arms, and legs. Some bruises appear fresh, others are in different stages of healing. The presence of these bruises suggests the possibility of prior physical altercations. Forensic experts consulted by the Greenberg family propose that some bruises could be defensive wounds, indicating that Ellen may have tried to fend off an attacker. One expert, a neuropathologist hired by the family, examines Ellen's spinal cord. Contrary to the original autopsy report, the expert concludes that one of the stab wounds penetrated Ellen's spinal cord. Such an injury would have caused immediate paralysis, making it unlikely that she could continue to stab herself multiple times afterward. The original autopsy report attributes a lack of spinal cord damage to the assessment of Dr. Lucy Rourke Adams, a renowned neuropathologist. However, when contacted, Dr. Rourke Adams states that she has no recollection of ever examining Ellen's case. There are no records of her involvement, no reports, no billing, nothing to substantiate the claim that she assessed the spinal cord. This revelation casts a shadow over the credibility of the autopsy report. If Dr. Rourke Adams didn't examine Ellen's spinal cord, who did? And why was her name included in the report? Adding to the confusion are reports of Ellen's alleged internet searches for suicide methods. These searches were not part of the initial investigation. They surfaced years later, without clear documentation of their origin. D'Andrea expresses skepticism about these findings. During his thorough review of the case, there was no mention of such searches. He questions the validity of this evidence and whether it was introduced to support the suicide ruling after the fact. The Greenbergs' frustration mounts as they encounter what they perceive to be a pattern of negligence and perhaps even obstruction. They allege that critical evidence was overlooked or mishandled. They believe that authorities were too quick to accept the suicide ruling, possibly to avoid a lengthy and complicated homicide investigation. They also express disappointment in Josh Shapiro's handling of the case. They feel that as Attorney General, he had the power to mandate a thorough reinvestigation but chose not to. The family alleges that Shapiro avoided the case, viewing it as politically inconvenient. Despite repeated attempts, they receive little response from his office. Public support for the Greenbergs grows as more people become aware of the case's intricacies. Petitions circulate, calling for the reopening of the investigation. Social media buzzes with discussions and theories. Legal action becomes the next avenue for the family. They file lawsuits aiming to challenge the suicide ruling and compel authorities to change Ellen's cause of death to homicide, or at least undetermined. Their case eventually reaches the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. They hope that the highest court in the state will acknowledge the discrepancies and order a new investigation. Back in Philadelphia, Brian Enton continues his reporting. He manages to obtain more surveillance footage and interviews additional witnesses. Each new piece of information adds depth to the narrative, but also heightens the sense of unease. He interviews neighbors who recall hearing loud arguments coming from Ellen and Samuel's apartment in the weeks leading up to her death. Some describe hearing shouting matches, though it's unclear who was involved. Enton also uncovers that the swing bar latch on the apartment door could potentially be manipulated from the outside with some effort. This challenges the notion that the apartment was entirely secured from the inside, as Samuel had claimed. As the investigation deepens, Enton reaches out to Samuel Goldberg for comment. Goldberg does not respond. He has since moved to New York, remarried, and started a new life. He has never been named a suspect, and there are no official allegations against him. The lack of response, however, leaves many questions unanswered. Ellen's friends and colleagues remember her as a joyful and caring individual. They struggle to reconcile the idea of her taking her own life, especially in such a violent manner. Some recall that she had expressed feelings of anxiety in the past, but nothing that suggested suicidal ideation. Medical records indicate that Ellen had been prescribed medication for anxiety in the months before her death. Her parents acknowledge this, but maintain that she was actively seeking help and was optimistic about the future. The case of Ellen Greenberg is a tapestry of conflicting evidence, alleged missteps, and unanswered questions. At its heart is a family seeking closure and justice for their daughter. Their journey highlights the challenges that can arise when investigations are perceived as flawed or incomplete. It raises important questions about the responsibilities of law enforcement and medical examiners in thoroughly examining all possibilities. As the legal proceedings move forward, the Greenbergs remain steadfast. They hope that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court will see merit in their case and order a change in the cause of death. Such a decision could pave the way for a new investigation, potentially uncovering the truth about what happened that cold January night. For now, Ellen's story serves as a sobering reminder of the complexities that can surround untimely deaths. It underscores the importance of diligence, transparency, and accountability in the pursuit of justice.
In a world where the darkest secrets lie just beneath the surface,
They said it was an accident, but the evidence says otherwise.
where hidden killers roam unnoticed in the shadows.
I think you would definitely be looking at a blend of toxic, very bad narcissistic personality traits, and they will be vengeful and possibly resort to violence.
Join Tony Bruschi as he uncovers the truth behind the most chilling cases.
They said it was an accident, but the evidence clearly says otherwise.
Each episode, we dig deep into the minds of those who commit the unthinkable.
To your point on narcissism, he thinks in his own mind how witty he is.
Yeah.
But he lost that jury. I was done with him in 2 minutes.
From unsolved mysteries to infamous crimes.
Geez, you've just talked about how you've taught yourself how to do everything under the sun. I bet you did a YouTube video, how to best kill somebody with a knife.
Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi takes you where few dare to go.
How does someone with such a dark secret go unnoticed for so long?
With multiple new episodes every single day.
We're not just telling stories, we're seeking justice.
Listen now on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi.